Megan says, I'm 32 and saving for a house to buy within a year or two. Is it okay to only contribute 15% to retirement while I save for the house, or should I be more around 25%? I already have $200,000 in my retirement accounts because I got started early and had a killer employer match at my first job. Thanks, Megan. Boy, you are off and running if you're 32 and you got $200,000 saved for retirement, and you're still going to be able to save for a house if she backs down to 15% on the retirement savings.
Yeah, let's take a look at something that is what I call the magic of compound interest. It is actually technically called the Rule of 72. It's a very simple rule. It's one of the first things that I ever learned, Scott, in the investment business. I wasn't even in the investment business when I learned this. I was like, this is amazing. I got to figure out how to tell everybody about this. But here's the Rule of 72. What the rule does is it estimates the number of years required for invested money to double at a given annual rate of return. Now, this doesn't have anything to do with future contributions for Megan. So just set that aside. We're not really talking about this. We're talking about, as you can see on the graphic, if you're watching online, we're starting with someone who is 32 years old that has $200,000. If we consider that Megan is going to get an estimated 8% rate of return. Now, let's go to school here. That 8% rate of return is not going to happen every year, and it doesn't have to happen. But what you have to think about is what the average is over that time. And Scott, historically, the S&P 500 has done at least 8% rate of return long-term for as long as you want to go back and look at it.
Yeah, and rarely does it actually get 8%. We've done pieces on that before. That 8% annual rate of return has been made up of plus 22s and negative 18s all along the way, so you have to know that.
Yeah, so we're talking about an average here. So if you consider that 8% rate of return, then you just simply take 72 and divide it by the rate of return, 8%, and what you get is a 9-year doubling period. So 72 divided by 8 equals 9, and so that doubles every 9 years. So here's how that actually plays out. Megan is 32 right now. She has $200,000 in her investment account. On an average rate of return of 8%, she'll have somewhere around $400,000 when she's 41. By the time she's 50, she'll have in the neighborhood of $800,000. By the time she's 59, she'll have 1.6 million, because 800 times 2 is 1.6 million. And by the time she's 68, by the time she can, begin to think about Social Security and things of that nature at full retirement age, she's got over $3 million in her investment account. So I would say that she's in pretty safe territory to not quit saving into her 401k, but it is certainly easy for her to back off and go down to 15% and save that money for the house.
A little bit of a caution here. Can we put the graphic back up there, Casey, real quick? And I wish I had a telestrator to do this, because if you think about when most people retire, it's going to be between that 59 and 68 year frame, right? So somewhere in there is Megan's retirement, and she's going to land somewhere between 1.6 and 3.2 if she doesn't even contribute a future dollar. And I think it can be really easy for someone to look at that, John, and go, oh my gosh, that's way more than I'm going to need for retirement. Well, let's look at this, though. She's 32. Yes, 1.6 to 3.2 is a fantastic range if you're retiring in 2023. You're going to be just fine, more than likely. But you think about the compound interest that happens to her investments, the inflation factor there, too. It's not going to likely be 8%. But you're going to need, Megan is going to need, and anybody that's age 32 today is going to need more to retire than someone who is retiring today.
Yeah, that is very true, Scott. And that is one of the things that I think I'm a little bit concerned about when I look at the activity of investors these days. A lot of people are really fleeing, since interest rates have gone up, a lot of people are really fleeing to certificates of deposit, very safe, conservative investments, because they don't really know what the future is going to hold, and I'm just going to park it in a CD over here. That is not a long-term play for financial independence. As a matter of fact, you are robbing yourself of the opportunity for financial independence. As Scott just pointed out, inflation is going to march on. You've got to have something in your portfolio that is going to help you to stay ahead of inflation. Historically, the only two things that have done that is real estate and equities, meaning investments in the stock market. Now, Scott, I understand Stock market investments are scary things right now to people, as volatile as the market has been the last couple of years. But you have to understand the dynamic of this, and that the number one, equities are the only thing that are going to get you to a level of financial independence. And secondly, you have to understand that there are some risk mitigation measures that you can take on equities. It's not on or off. I have to be in a CD, or I'm taking all the risk of being in equities. There is some risk mitigation that you can do if you're working with an advisor who can help you to understand that. So I really think that when you take a look at somebody like Megan, there's a lot of instruction that can come from this. One other thing that I would mention, Scott, is that Megan doesn't need to overdo it on the house. Just because she's got the wind at her back right now.
Yeah, I think the best thing here is to create a plan. And I would even say a retirement plan at age 32. Now that sounds crazy, right? Well, it's probably going to get changed several times over the next couple of decades, but I think it's very important that Megan tell a financial advisor, when do you plan to retire? Where along that 59 to 68 time frame are you going to land? Where are you going to end up with your assets if you back off from 25% to 15% of your income? Because those are arbitrary numbers that don't really tell us much. It's a great rule of thumb, and if you're not doing anything, that's a great goal to get to 15%. But that would allow her to know, okay, if I continue to put 15% of my income towards retirement, and I have $200,000, and I can assume an average stock market rate of return over the next 3 decades, by 62, here's where I'll be and what that retirement income would look like, then that can allow her to know the rest can go to save for a down payment on a house.
Well, and even to accelerate the payment on that house and be debt-free by the time you get to retirement without question, but certainly to try to accelerate the payment and get debt-free even sooner, because then you can just save like crazy to get to retirement even earlier. So congratulations to Megan, $200,000 in a retirement account at 32. Amazing. Don't let up on what you're doing. Just be smart about it, and be sure to stick with some of the principles that we've talked about today, particularly that power of compound interest.